the king of my heart be the mountain where I run, the fountain I drink from. Oh, he is my soul. Let the king of my heart be the shadow where I hide, the ransom for my life. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good. Oh, 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 let the king of my heart be the wind inside my sails, the anchor in the waves. Oh, he is my song. Let the king of my heart be the fire inside my veins, the echo of my days. Oh, he is my song. You are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Oh, you are good, good. Whoa, whoa, you are good, good. Whoa. You're never gonna let me down. 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 You are good, good. Oh, 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 one night is holding on to me. thinking about what I wanted the worship set to be, and kind of going through something where we had to make some last-minute changes in our set, and kind of some last-minute changes to our plan. I was just kind of asking God, okay, what do you want us to kind of achieve this morning, God? What do you want to speak to someone, whether this is for just one person here, or maybe it's for like a whole crowd of people, maybe it's something that somebody needs to hear and take back and share with a friend or a family member. But I think just this idea that His love is so great, and if there's anybody that's in this room today that maybe is still kind of wrestling with that, or wrestling with this idea of just that unfathomable love, maybe you never experienced that in like family, maybe you never experienced that in friends, or maybe you never really had an understanding, and so you're standing here this morning and you're thinking, God, how can someone like you love me so much? And how can someone like you love me despite the areas that I'm, constantly messing up in, and, I tell myself I'm going to do better, but I'm still going back to the same things. God, how do you love us? And this morning we're going to sing a song, and it's called How He Loves, and I just encourage you guys, if you want to sing along, you can sing with me, or maybe if there's somebody that just needs to allow this song to be sung over them this morning, then I just pray that you would take it in, and I pray that God would just speak something to you in this moment. It may just be a song, and it might just be lyrics, but I just ask that God would just, cut to the deepest part of your hearts this morning, and cut to the deepest part of maybe where you feel most hurt, or maybe where you feel most abandoned, or maybe where you feel the most lack of love in your life. And so this morning as we sing this song, I just encourage you to allow it to just paint a picture of how great God is, and how much He loves us, how much He wants our hearts, and how much He wants to be with us this morning and through the rest of our lives. His love is so great, and it's so good. Just
Lord, I pray that we would know your love today, Lord God. As we enter into this season, we are reminded that you relinquished your divine privilege so that you would become a baby, so that you could live a life and be constantly misunderstood and accused of motives and things that were not attributed or right, but you did so because of love. You were born to die so that you would be able to atone for the sin, Lord God, the sin of humanity, the sin of me. And so today, God, we give you honor and praise because you are worthy of it. And I pray, Lord God, that we would know that sacrificial love, God, that you extend, Lord God, to each one of us. So I pray, Lord, that you would be with us today. For someone in this room today, God, who is needing to be convinced of your love, God, I pray that you be able to speak to them in a language that they need to hear. God, for those in this room today, God, who may feel like they are far from your love, I pray, Lord, that you would draw them deeper. Lord God, for someone in this room today who is skeptical about this faith, I pray, Lord God, that you would draw us in, that you would speak to us and meet us where we're at, Lord, today. Just like you did as a baby, you came to us, Lord God, where we needed to be met. I pray you would do the same today. In your name, amen. Amen. Man, I'm so glad that you guys could be here today. My name is Josh. Man, it is a chilly day outside, but it is beautiful. The sky is blue. All the trees are green. We have our Christmas lights up. It's the beginning of Christmas season right now, and so we're really excited about all that God is doing. So I'm just going to give you guys 2 minutes just to say hi to someone that's next to you, refill your coffee cup if you guys need to be warmed up a little bit, and circle on back here in just 120 seconds. Hitting Christmas. So feel free to stick around for the next half hour so that we're together, and I know that you'll really love and appreciate it, all right? It's going to be awesome. Take care. All right. So a couple weeks ago, I shared with you all about a really cool win that all of us were able to participate in. The win that I was able to share with you guys is that I contacted the school district and I asked about the free and reduced lunch program that the Burlingame School District has. And I shared with you that as I was talking with the district, there were hundreds of students that were on a reduced lunch program that was currently delinquent in their accounts. That means that if they get a reduced lunch, that means that they are above the federal poverty line, which is like $22,000, which is like, rent for 2 months. But you're underneath sort of like the local poverty line. So it's sort of those families in Burlingame who are like right in the middle, really feeling the pressure. And so these reduced lunch programs are something that we felt like we wanted to be able to partner with these families and just make their lives a little bit easier. And so they shared with me that there were hundreds of students, 425 students that were currently delinquent in their accounts. And I currently learned that if a student is over $11.50 in their delinquent account, that means that they get a cold lunch bag instead of a hot lunch. It's like 2 pieces of bread with cheese in the middle. It's a state regulation that they have, and so they actually call these shame lunches. And so that didn't sit right with me. And so I shared with you a couple weeks ago that we paid off all the delinquent account for all the students here at BIS. But still, on top of BIS, there are still 6 elementary schools throughout our district, or throughout Burlingame. And each one of those represented dozens and dozens and dozens of students who had a reduced lunch program but were delinquent in their accounts, many of whom were over the $11.50. And so I was able to go into the school district, and I was able to further pay off the rest of the schools throughout Burlingame, so that no kids are going to be getting cold lunches from here on out. It just seems that's something that Jesus would do, right? He pays for debts so that we don't have to be ashamed. And so that's a little bit of something that we do. And so that, I didn't take up a special offering for that. We were able to do that simply because of the generosity that you already or if you got a giving envelope on the way in, you can feel free to, cash check or whatever in order to support the ministry here at Sacred Church. And then we are doing something different. So if you're a regular, this might seem kind of weird. We are going to be dropping off our offering and also our connection cards, the blue connection cards, off at the end of service. So as you leave, the ushers will be there, and you can just drop that off in the bucket. And if you didn't get either an offering envelope or a blue card, our ushers are going to come forward and just wave them down, and they'll throw you a card or a pen or anything that you might need so that you can fill out that information for me. If you are a guest with us today, I want to encourage you to fill out that communication card just so I can send you a follow-up message and say thanks for coming out. If you're a regular, please also fill out that communication card and also throw me any prayer requests that you may have so I can forward it on to our advisors because we pray for every prayer request that comes to us. Now we are in December, so that means a little bit of change of plans of scheduling and whatnot, and so check out the video so you know what's happening on the other side.
We believe our greatest days are ahead of us, and you are a part of that story. You can help us spread the excitement by posting a picture, checking in on Facebook, or tweeting your experience. Some people in your life are looking for a vibrant, healthy church, and your post may be the invitation someone is looking for. As you plan out your Christmas schedule, here are 2 dates to be aware of. On Sunday, December 24, we will be hosting one Christmas Eve service at our regular 11 a.m. service time. This will be a family service with Christmas carols, a story reading for the kids before they dismiss for a project, and the final message in our Christmas series. The following Sunday, on December 31st, we will not be hosting a service. We do this yearly to gift our volunteers and staff a Sunday off after a year of hard work.
So Jelly mentioned that we had a little bit of a change in plans for this morning. In fact, we had a couple different changes in plans. One of which is, you'll notice my wife isn't here. Evie's not here with us today because she is super Burlingame now. when we lived in the East Bay, one of the things when we recently got married, we're living in the East Bay outside of Richmond, and when we were living outside of Richmond, one of our cheat meals sometimes we would just get Italian wedding soup, and it was like Progresso brand or whatever, and we'd make we just have some soup with some bread for dinner, just right out of the can, just pop and then throw it in and just heat it up. Well, since moving to Burlingame, we haven't done that very much because Burlingamers don't eat their soups out of cans. But somehow we found some in our cupboard, and she had some 2 days or a day ago. And ever since she ate it, she's like, "Oh, I don't feel good." And I'm like, "You're so Burlingame." Apparently her body thought so too, because her body was like, "What did you do to me?" So she got food poisoning. And so all night she was up last night, and so that was really pretty rough on her. So you could pray for her, because I know that she's feeling it right now. And so she was actually going to be up in the band with Jelly. And the reason why we only had 2 up here rather than our full band is because on Friday night we were down at Burlingame Ave, and our full band was there, and they were able to do some Christmas songs right there on Burlingame Ave, and we were able to give out these Join Us cards. We were giving out we gave out over 100 of these cards to different people walking up and down Burlingame Avenue, just telling people that there's a church that exists with an awesome band and good people. And so it was a great time, so we wanted to give our band a morning off because they were working really hard for that. But it just seems like, I love that Joey was able just to step up and just lead us in worship, just solo style. Something's nice about just going back to your roots. Something's just nice about that. So we are in this new Christmas series called Hitting Christmas. And we're going to be looking at different Christmas traditions or things that we associate with Christmas, and how there's actually a more scriptural meaning behind a lot of the stuff that we just assume is just a part of Christmas. One of the things that we did yesterday, my family, before Evie started getting all sicky sauce, is that we went out and bought a tree. Trim, why don't you throw up the picture of the tree that we have here? We bought this little tree, and we were setting it up together yesterday. If you'll notice, it's a tabletop tree, because my son is a year old now. And so, if you don't know, for all of our single people in here, you don't get a tree that's all the way on the floor up until a kid's about 3 years old. Otherwise, the tree is on the floor every single day. And so Nora was really confused because last year we had a big old tree. This year we had to have a little itty bitty tree up on a tabletop. But as we were setting up the tree, of course, you know the process of setting up the tree. You tie it to your car, your manhood gets tested. Are you going to be able to get home with the tree still on top of the car? And by the time you get home, you wring it out so all the dead leaves are off of it, and you bring it inside, and then you put the tree in the perfect place, and you have to turn it around, 3 or 4 times to get that perfect angle to sort of cover the bald spot in the tree. And by the time you set it up, you're like, all right, now it's time to decorate. And what's the first thing that we decorate on the tree? We decorate the lights first. Absolutely. Lights are always the first thing that you put on the tree, because you don't want to put ornaments and then try to do lights on top of it. No, lights are always the first thing that goes on the tree. And then, of course, that magical moment when all the stuff is on the tree, the star goes on top, and then you flip on the lights, and then the awe of the children when they see, wow, look how beautiful it is. There's just something about lights that is just associates with Christmas. Even these little string lights over here. We don't call them string lights, we call them Christmas lights. And Christmas lights just have a way of associating with this holiday that we celebrate together. But it's more than just lights are more than just because they're on trees or because we string them, along panels. But light is a very prophetic symbol of the coming Messiah. In fact, it goes back generations and years and years and years before there was electricity or trees. Jesus was called the light of the world. In fact, in Isaiah chapter 9, we're going to see this sort of symbol of Jesus being the light. And if you're opening up your Bibles, we're going to be in verse 2 and verse 6. But this matters today because maybe someone in here is very tired by trying to be trying to be perfect, or maybe you're discouraged by society, or maybe you recently felt how hurtful and destructive sin is because of a relationship. But light reminds us that our hope comes from outside of us. Light reminds us that darkness is not our destiny, and light reminds us that sin is ultimately beaten. And so if you will open up your Bibles today in Isaiah chapter 9, verse 2, or it's going to be up on the screen for us today. The prophet Isaiah is foretelling the coming Messiah. He's talking about the Savior that is to be born, and he is describing for the people of Israel what to look for. And this is what he says: "The people who walk in darkness will see a great light. For those who live in a land of deep darkness, a light will shine." A couple lines later in verse 6, he talks about the object of this light. For a child is born to us, a son is given to us. The government will rest on his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. As I was thinking about light and darkness, there's a couple of things that I picked up from this verse 2 that I really enjoyed. First of all, people are accustomed to darkness. Trent, if you'll throw the verse up for me again. It says that the people who will walk in darkness, they were simply walking in darkness. It seems like they are accustomed to it. Later on in the verse, it says that for those who live in the land of deep darkness, they are walking in darkness, they are living in darkness. People are accustomed to darkness. And I wonder if people are accustomed to darkness because darkness is ultimately the default. Ultimately, darkness is the default. In the beginning, there was darkness until God created light. In creation, there is darkness until the sun rises. In our souls, we are prone to sin until we have an outside source of salvation to redeem us and to change us. Darkness is ultimately our default. And I think if we recognize ourselves and even creation at the beginning, the symbol, we find ourselves that people are accustomed to being in the dark. I was also thinking in contrast about light. I was thinking about light and specifically how people can't make light. Now, maybe you think that's sort of like a duh sort of statement here, but people can't make light. Now, we can use wood and flint to make fire. We can harness electricity to illuminate a light bulb. We can make a windmill to store energy into an electrical grid to eventually create light. We can buy the light-up shoes that happen when we run from one side of the room to the other. But at the end of the day, people can't make light without using an outside resource. Flint, electricity, light-bright shoes, they're all made from outside stuff. And it's incredible that our bodies are capable of doing incredible things. Women are able to grow a person inside of them, birth that person, and then feed that person solely off of their body. Like, that's incredible. But for as much as our bodies are able to do and our minds are able to solve really complex equations and think great, big, deep thoughts, when it comes to light, we can only leverage what's been given to us. And I think that that's part of the reason why darkness is ultimately our default, and why maybe we are so comfortable in darkness, because we can't make light without something that has already been given to us. Whether it's these fancy lights, those fancy lights are there, or the sun that rises in the morning. This is why it matters. Because people aren't sources of light, people source light. I'm going to say that one more time. People aren't sources of light, people source light. And this is why it's really important to make this distinction between being a source of light and being one who sources light. Because this is the fundamental difference of the Christmas theme and of the Christian message. Our hope, our salvation, deliverance doesn't come from within, it comes from without. I'm going to say that one more time. This is the fundamental difference between our faith and the faith philosophy of many other faiths. light, truth, deliverance, change doesn't happen from within, but the source comes from without. One of the big news items right now is all about the sexual harassment accusations that are coming out from various people around the world, and this is the current news climate that we find ourselves in. Previously beloved men who are icons of culture are being exposed for awful acts of sin that was done in darkness. And these stories hurt us not only because the victims of these events were hurt, but many of these perpetrators were heroes of our ideas. They were titans of our culture. They were holders of goodness. And so when our sin is exposed and our darkness is found, our hope that humanity is getting better is dampened, and our flawed belief that our salvation can come from within is ultimately exposed. This is important because we see all these people and all this stuff coming to light, and we find ourselves grounded in the fact that we think that if we just try hard enough, if we do better, then ultimately salvation and goodness and deliverance will come. But then exposed things happen, and we realize that we are just as in deep darkness as we've always been. It reminds me of a Tim Keller quote. He says, Christianity does not agree with the optimist thinker who says, we can fix things if we try hard enough. Nor does it agree with the pessimists who see only a dystopian future. The message of Christianity is instead, things are really this bad, and we can't heal or save ourselves. Things are really this dark. Nevertheless, there is hope. To put it in a really simple way, our hope isn't found in us. Our hope is found outside of us. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jesus says you have a light, a bushel. Don't hide it underneath a bushel. Jesus also said, we are the hands and feet of Jesus. And so aren't we light to the people and to our communities around us? Yes, I guess. But I think so in this way, you are more of a vehicle of light than a source of light. You are a vehicle for Jesus' light, a host of his truth, and a witness to his word. And this is the difference between Jesus' message and many other messages of other faiths. Enlightenment, atonement do not come from inner discipline and centralized serenity, but salvation is found outside of us. And an atonement that could only be paid for by an outside source. And this is ultimately why it matters. Because we are the branch that's connected to the vine. We are the hands that but Jesus is the head. We are the gold disco ball on the tree, and Jesus is the light string producing the light. We are more reflective than we are the source. See, because if light could be found from within, then we wouldn't be living in darkness, and there would be no need for a Messiah. But yet, here we are. Because verse 2 says that the people were living in darkness. They were walking in a deep despair. But then a light was shown to them. And so there's a couple things that, different prophetic qualities that light brings us. Whether it's actual sunlight, things that the sunlight produces, or whether it is Jesus himself. These are some of the things I think of, prophetic qualities that we find in life. If you know anything about light, you know that light brings life. Light brings life. See, light brings and it exposes what's in the darkness. Well, I have a really good friend who got caught up in a story, very similar to many stories that we've heard. Man was unfaithful to his wife. Wife didn't know about it for a long time. Something happened. He got exposed. And then what was once in darkness, truth came out, and now it was in the light. Well, being exposed hurts, but what this husband did is he decided to go through a reconciliation process, and they went through counseling, and they found themselves going deeper with God, and they started reconciling and building trust, and it was a long and dreadful and hard healing process, but they reaffirmed their marriage to one another, and now, even though they went through all that hurt, their marriage is more alive today than the days before he got exposed of what was really going on. And see, this is kind of what's important, is when light shines, like, it freaks out our exposure, right? Like walking in from a movie theater, like walking outside, what's your face look like right after you walk out of the movie theater into the sun? Right? Because exposure to that kind of light after being in such darkness hurts a little bit. It's a little bit uneasy, right? In the same way, when light is shown on the darkness of our souls and the darkness of our acts and the darkness of our beliefs, we can spiritually be like, but light brings life. And even though light also brings truth, which we're going to talk about here in a second, ultimately, if something is going to grow, light needs to be shown on it. But anything that light shows, obviously, it's going to be a little uneasy. Exposure is uneasy, but hiding is ultimately regressing. And so we can expect a prophetic quality of light bringing life. And that's exactly what Jesus does, doesn't he? He comes in and he exposes things to us, and he does so not so that we would be condemned, but that we would find life and truth and growth and joy. He exposes darkness to bring life, not to bring death. That's why in John 3:17 it says that Jesus came not to condemn the world, but to save the world. Light brings life. Light also brings truth. I was thinking about how relativity thrives in darkness. Relativity thrives in darkness. It's really easy to justify motives or actions in darkness, in the cloak of night. It's really easy to wiggle your way around doing right and wrong when darkness is around. Relativity thrives in darkness, just like mold or fungus. But when light is exposed, so is truth. See, you can be driving down a car without your headlights on, and at midnight, and you can believe you know what's on the other side of that turn and just simply blindly trust. Or you can turn on your headlights and truth will tell you exactly what's right in front of you. But I know that as we're thinking about this, we're like, haha, Jesus shows light on truth, and you have the cause in your mind about the thing that Jesus needs to expose his light onto. I think another thing we need to realize about how light brings truth, light also has no partiality. Because as much as when we invite light into the situations or the causes that we may be passionate about, light is also going to shine on me and myself and my motives and my insecurities and maybe the things that I've held on to that have been in darkness myself. Light shows no partiality. Truth is not partial. And that is exactly what Jesus did. Jesus came with the fullness of grace and truth, and he found himself offending both the religious sect and also the secular sect, and he offended a lot of people that didn't want to hear truth. But truth shows no partiality, much like light. Another thing is that light ultimately brings beauty. Of course, turning on a Christmas light, those are great moments. Turn on the Christmas lights, seeing your lights flutter up. But ultimately, after there is growth and after there is life, there is ultimately beauty. Beauty uncovers not only darkness and the things maybe that are a little bit grimy, but it also uncovers a lot of beauty and a lot of goodness. And it gives us pause. See, the constant temptation, as we're about to close up, and I'm going to have Jelly come up here, one of the constant temptations of humanity is to think that, we've got it. And if we can start relying on ourselves to produce light. But we believe the lie. We believe that that's a lie that says if we try harder, then we can be good. Because ultimately, people aren't sources of light. We source light. But we also, in this room, can't fall into the mindset to think that all is lost and ultimately there is no hope. Because there is a hope, and God believes in humanity to source light, truth, and beauty of Jesus and not just of ourselves. The world has a hope, and the world's hope comes from outside of it. And so I realize that today, as we enter into this Christmas season, many of us, maybe much like in Isaiah chapter 9, we're walking this path in darkness. We become so accustomed to the darkness that we don't know what the light looks like. And I feel like that's what a lot of our society is in. We have a relative truth in thinking that, we're in the right, I've got it figured out. If I can just try hard enough, then I can sort of quench my violent desires. If I try hard enough, I can hide this ugly part of me. If I can just be more disciplined, then maybe the enlightenment from within me can come out. But that's not what Christmas teaches us. Christmas teaches us that we were in darkness and Jesus showed up. And until we admit to ourselves that we are in darkness and we allow Jesus to show up, and when we are exposed in those moments, we don't become so vulnerable and scared and fearful that we cower back into the darkness and hide. But we allow the light to bring life, truth, and beauty to the parts of our souls that have been decrepit for years. Christmas gives us a promise, a hope, a reminder that our hope doesn't come from within, but from without. Will you stand with me today?